welcome to your deep dive today.
Oh, cool.
We're going to be looking at overthinking,
Okay.
and specifically a video by Prince Ia called Overthinking STOPS. Now, have you seen this one?
I have. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I thought, it'd be cool to kind of unpack some of the stuff he talks about in there.
Yeah, for sure.
And, maybe apply it to our own lives.
Yeah, definitely.
So he starts off the video with this statistic from Stanford
Okay.
that we spend 58 out of every 60 minutes
Oh.
dwelling on the past
Wow.
or worrying about the future.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, is that really how much time?
Yeah, I feel like that's
Most people.
Yeah.
Not in the present moment.
totally. And it makes me think of that Mark Twain quote.
Oh, yeah.
I'm an old man and have known a great many troubles.
Right.
Most of which never happened.
Right.
So it's just like all this energy and time we're putting into, stuff that hasn't even happened yet.
And may never happen.
And may never happen, exactly.
Yeah, and this is kind of Prince Isi's main point, is that
Yeah.
our minds can be so powerful
Yeah.
and useful, but they can also
Be a real detriment.
be really detrimental. Yeah, and we can get
For sure.
really caught up in our own thoughts.
Totally.
And actually, he uses this analogy of a wild horse.
Oh, yeah. I love that analogy.
You remember this?
Yeah.
It's like this king has this wild stallion
Right.
that nobody can tame.
And all these expert horsemen, they're coming and they're trying to wrangle it and break it.
And they're failing.
And they're failing miserably.
Yes. And then this unassuming guy comes along.
Right.
And he just puts the horse in the paddock.
Just lets it be.
Lets it run around.
Yeah.
Until it's tired.
Yeah, just lets it exhaust itself.
And then he can work with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, how does that apply to...
Well, it's kind of like our thoughts, right?
Okay.
We so often try to just suppress them or get rid of them.
Right, force them out.
Yeah, and it doesn't work, right? It just makes them stronger.
It makes them worse.
So it's more about letting them be there,
Okay.
acknowledging them,
Right.
but not getting totally caught up in them.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, that's where present awareness comes in.
Okay.
Which Prince Iso talks about.
Right. So he's not saying don't think,
No, not at all.
but be aware.
Yeah, just be present.
Be present
Notice what's happening around you.
in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he tells this great story about the Buddha.
I love that way.
So there's this reporter
Yeah.
who goes up to the Buddha and says,
What are you?
"What are you?"
Right.
And the Buddha just says,
I am awareness.
"I'm awareness."
Just like that.
Isn't that cool?
It's so simple and yet
So powerful.
so powerful. Yeah.
Just that's it.
Yeah.
That's the essence of who we are.
It really is.
Yeah.
That awareness.
And that kind of leads into this other idea
Okay.
of you are not your thoughts.
Right.
Yeah. We tend to identify
Totally.
so much with the voice in our head.
Yeah, that voice is who we are.
Right.
But is it really?
Right.
If you were that voice,
Right.
then who's listening to it?
Whoa.
Right?
That's trippy.
It's kind of mind-bending, but it's also really freeing when you start to think about it that way.
Yeah, because it's there's this other part of me
Yeah.
that's not
Separate.
the thoughts.
Exactly.
It's observing the thoughts.
Yeah.
And Prince Ia brings up this Zen riddle to kind of illustrate this point.
Oh, I love the Zen riddles.
Yeah, they're so good.
They really make you think.
So this one is, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him.
Whoa. Okay, that's intense.
Right. So what do you think that means?
Well, I think it's saying that anything we can conceptualize,
Okay.
even a holy figure like Buddha, is
Yeah.
not our true self.
It's not the real thing.
Right. It's just a concept.
It's just an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the ultimate reality.
It's-
Okay, so, and he goes on to talk about this idea of the brain as a receiver
Okay.
rather than a creator of thoughts.
Interesting.
Have you ever thought about that?
I mean, it makes sense in a way, right? We often feel like our thoughts are just kind of coming out of nowhere.
Right.
We don't always choose them.
Yeah, I'm not
They just pop up.
sitting here going okay, next thought, this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more we're tuning into them somehow,
Right.
like a radio.
And he actually has people in the video do this experiment
Oh, yeah.
where they close their eyes and they try to predict their next thought.
And you can't do it.
You can't.
You're impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy, right?
It is. Yeah. It really challenges the notion that we're in complete control of our thoughts.
All right. We say my thought.
Yeah.
But
where are they coming from?
where are they coming from?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so he uses this analogy of the moon.
Okay.
reflecting the sun's light.
Right.
Like the moon doesn't have its own light.
It's just reflecting.
It's just reflecting.
It's the sun's light.
So maybe our minds are kind of like that.
Interesting.
You know, like maybe they're
Just
reflecting
reflecting something else.
something deeper.
Something bigger.
Yeah, like consciousness or,
The universe?
yeah, or something like that.
Wow. It's a beautiful analogy.
It is.
I like that.
And then he introduces these teachings
Yeah.
of Ramana Maharshi.
Oh, yeah. Ramana Maharshi. He was a fascinating guy.
Have you heard of him?
I have. Yeah. He was like this Indian sage
Okay.
known for his really simple but profound insights.
Okay. So tell me about him.
Well, one of the stories that Princia shares
Yeah.
is about this traveler
Okay.
who like journeys for weeks
No, wow.
to go see Ramana Maharshi.
Wow.
And he asks him the classic question, who am I?
Right.
And Ramana Maharshi just tells him, go back to where you came from.
Go back to where you came from.
Yeah.
So obviously he's not talking about physically
No.
going back.
No, it's more like a spiritual journey. Oh, okay.
Like going back to the source of your being
Okay.
before all the thoughts and the ego and all of that.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, it is.
So how do you actually do that?
Well, Ramana Maharshi had this technique where he would encourage people to ask themselves,
Okay.
to whom do these thoughts come?
To whom do these thoughts come?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
A powerful question, right? Like it really cuts through all the noise and points you back to that awareness that we were talking about.
Yeah, like it's not me,
Right.
it's to whom.
Yeah, like who's experiencing these thoughts?
Wow.
It's a good one to contemplate.
We should all try that.
For sure.
It's amazing how like a simple question can just kind of thought the mind.
It's like hitting the pause button
Yeah,
on the mental chatter.
for a second.
Exactly. And that space is where the magic happens.
It is.
That's where we can connect with that deeper awareness.
Yeah, and kind of see things more clearly.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like stepping out of the whirlwind into the eye of the storm.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because Princey also talks about how our tendency to overthink is often tied to our attachment to outcomes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like we want things to go a certain way.
Yes.
And when they don't,
Our minds just go crazy.
yeah, we freak out.
We freak out. Yeah.
To start overanalyzing everything.
And trying to control things.
Right. Like if we just worry enough,
Yeah.
then somehow we can like force the outcome we want.
But life doesn't really work that way.
Nope, definitely not.
And he actually tells this really funny story
Oh, yeah.
to illustrate this point.
The one about the king
Yes.
and the counselor.
Yeah, so the counselor,
Who always said all is well.
all is well and unfolding as it should.
Right. No matter what was happening.
Right. And some of the other advisors were like really jealous of this guy.
Oh, yeah. They wanted to get rid of him.
They want to get rid of him because he was like the king's favorite.
Right.
So they convinced the king that the counselor was being disrespectful.
By not taking his problems seriously.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one day the king is shaving
Okay.
and he cuts himself like a little nick
Just a little nick.
and he freaks out.
Oh, no.
He's so mad.
The king's got a temper.
Yes, he does.
Okay. So he's like fuming.
He calls for the counselor.
Right. Looking for some sympathy.
Yes, expecting the
Yeah.
counselor to be like, oh my gosh, we need to call the doctor, whatever.
Right. Make a big fuss about it.
But the counselor just comes in
Then what does he say?
and he looks at the king and he says,
Okay.
all is well and unfolding as it should.
Oh, boy.
I know.
That probably didn't go over well.
The king loses it,
He probably did. Yeah.
throws the counselor in the dungeon.
Wow.
I
So
know.
much for all is well.
Right.
For the counselor, at least.
Yeah, exactly. But then the king decides to go for a ride in the forest
All right.
by himself.
Alone in the woods.
And he runs into a group of cannibals.
Oh, no.
I know, right?
Talk about bad luck.
And they capture him.
They're going to eat him.
They're going to eat him. Yes.
Oh, my God.
But as they're getting ready
Yeah.
to like prepare him for the feast,
Right.
they notice the little cut
On his neck.
on his neck from shaving.
Right.
And they're like, oh no,
He's blemished.
he's blemished. We can't eat him.
I can't sacrifice him.
He's not perfect.
Wow.
I know. So they let him go.
What?
They let him go.
That's amazing.
The cannibals let the king go
Just because of a little cut?
just because of that little cut.
Wow.
So the king races back to the palace,
He's probably pretty happy to be alive.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
and he releases the counselor.
He realizes he was right.
He was right,
All is well.
even when it seems like it's not.
Yeah, even when you're about to be eaten by cannibals.
I know.
Sometimes things work out in mysterious ways.
They do.
It's a good reminder to just Trust,
Trust the process.
even when things seem bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well, it's a great story.
Yeah.
And I think it really highlights how sometimes our perspective is just so limited.
We can't see the big picture.
Yeah. We get caught up in our own little dramas.
And we think it's the end of the world.
Right. Exactly.
But maybe if we could just zoom out a little bit,
Yeah.
we'd see that.
Everything's unfolding as it should,
Yeah.
even if we don't understand it.
Even if it doesn't make sense to us at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, maybe just trying to trust a little bit more
And
see what happens.
let go of the need to control.
Surrender to the flow.
Surrender to the flow. I like that.
Okay, so what else does Prince Ea talk about?
Well, he also introduces this technique called neti.
Neti.
Have you heard of this?
I have, yeah. It's a Sanskrit term
Okay.
that basically means not this, not this.
Not this.
So it's a way of realizing your true self
Okay.
by figuring out what you're not.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
you're kind of like eliminating
Exactly.
all the things that you're not.
Peeling away the layers.
Get to the core.
Yeah, to find the essence.
So like,
Yeah, so for example.
am I my job?
Right.
Not this.
Not this.
Am I my possession?
Is not this.
Not this.
This.
My thoughts.
This.
My emotions.
It's like, it's a process of stripping away all the labels and the attachments.
Things that we cling to.
Yeah, that we think define us.
But they don't.
But they don't. So it's
No.
about creating space.
And discover who we really are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Underneath all of that.
And he actually leads people through a neti exercise
No.
in the video.
What's that like?
Well, it's kind of like a guided meditation
Okay.
where you focus on your breath
Right.
and you just notice the thoughts that come up
Okay.
without judgment.
Yeah.
And then you apply the not this inquiry.
So like if you have a thought.
Like, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
You say,
Not this.
not this.
Not this.
Yeah.
You're not denying the thought.
You're just observing it.
Exactly.
Detaching from it?
And recognizing that it's just a thought.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily true.
It doesn't define you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I like how you said that it's not about denying the thought.
Right.
It's about you know,
Acknowledging it and
Yeah.
then letting it go.
letting it go. And that reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with the brain as a receiver.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Maybe we're just tuning into different frequencies,
yes. And
Yeah.
with neti, we're kind of like clearing out the static.
clearing the channels
Yeah.
so we can receive a clearer signal,
Yeah,
a signal that's more aligned with our true nature.
exactly.
I like that. It's a
Yeah.
good analogy.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And it kind of makes you realize that, you know, you don't have to be a slave to your thoughts.
Right, exactly. Like you have a choice.
You have a choice, yeah.
You can choose how you want to relate to them.
Instead of just letting them run the show.
Yeah. And I think that's really empowering.
It is, yeah.
It reminds me of another quote by Ramana Maharshi.
Oh, yeah.
He said, "Whatever kind of thought arises, have the same reaction, not me, not my business."
Wow, that's good.
Right. Like just observing it.
Without getting attached.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not personal.
It's just a thought.
It's just a thought passing through.
Like a cloud in the sky.
Yeah.
You know,
It'll float on by.
and we've been talking about this idea of the mind as something separate.
Yeah.
You know, like there's us and then there's the mind.
The observer and the observed.
But what if it's not actually separate?
That's an interesting thought.
What if the mind is just part of who we are?
Okay.
Like it's not this enemy
Right.
that we're constantly battling with.
Yeah, like maybe it's more like a tool
Yeah.
that we can learn to use skillfully.
Instead of letting it use us.
Exactly.
So maybe instead of trying to silence the mind.
We could try to understand it better.
Yeah.
Work with it.
And maybe even appreciate it.
Yeah, like appreciate its power.
Yeah.
And its creativity.
It's amazing what the mind can do.
It is, yeah.
You know, like it can create entire worlds,
Solve complex problems.
compose symphonies,
Yeah.
write poetry.
The possibilities are endless,
They are.
but it's all about how we use it.
Right.
Like anything else, it can be used for good or for bad.
So maybe instead of getting lost in the noise,
Yeah.
we can learn to tune into a frequency.
That's more aligned with our values.
Yes.
Our purpose.
And maybe those times when we do overthink,
Yeah.
they're actually opportunities
For growth.
Yeah.
Like maybe they're showing us something.
that we need to pay attention to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of getting frustrated,
We can just be curious.
Yeah.
Like, what's this about?
what can I learn from this?
Yeah. I like that.
And that's kind of what Prince Ea is getting at, I think.
Yeah. He's basically encouraging us to become more aware of our thoughts
Yeah.
and to understand that we have a choice in how we respond to them.
We don't have to be victims of our own minds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can be the masters.
So that's pretty cool. It's a powerful message.
It is.
And I think it's one that we all need to hear.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world.
With all the distraction.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the noise.
Yeah.
And lose sight of who we really are.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this deep dive has been really helpful.
I agree.
It's a good reminder to just slow down.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Be present.
And trust.
Yeah.
Trust that everything is unfolding as it should.
I like that.
All is well.
All is well.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.